Hello and welcome to another episode of the Construction Corner podcast. I'm Dylan, I'm your host, and today, guys, we're going to be talking about 3 core problems that all engineering firms have. 1 is too much work, 2 is too little work, and 3 is no systems for anything. So with all of these, right, and too much work is you don't have enough time to do everything that you want. Really, this comes down to a people and process problem. For too little work, it means that you don't have any work. You never think you're going to get work again, and you don't know what to do in the meantime, right? Until that next project lands, and you just have all this downtime that you have no idea what to do with. And then the third one is systems, right? How do you have a system and a process so that everything is consistent, reliable for everything that you do? So when we talk about the primary problem of too little work, right? When you don't have anything to do. So what does this really come down to? It comes down to you have a sales problem. You have no idea how to go and get new work. You have no idea what to do in the meantime. So really you need to have a process for sales, right? So how do you go get work? Who do you talk to? What do you stand for? Why do you do what you do? And how do you win work? How do you sign contracts? How do you do that on a consistent, repeatable, and reliable basis? Now, we're not a sales podcast. We've talked about sales, but that's not our core thing. So we're going to leave it at that. You got to go find somebody that talks about sales and that process for the sales portion of why you don't have any work, and we'll leave it at that. Now, for the rest of it, and what do you do when you basically have downtime? That's effectively what we're talking about. You don't have a project to work on. You don't have anything for any of your team to do. So you're like, okay, what now, right? Your team's kind of bored. They've got some excess capacity. What do you end up doing? Well, you need to start investing in your systems and processes. And the problem also when you don't have enough work is you have this mentality around not enough cash, which is also a spending problem, where you need to invest in like future systems, right? Like you got to invest in marketing, again, sales problem. You got to invest in your people and processes. So when you do get that next job, you're not going to have the problem of too much work so that you can do all those projects when they come in. So you want to have basically a process improvement kind of cadence and system whenever you don't have as much work to do, and basically that your team has some excess capacity to do the things that they want to do. You want to invest in training so that your team becomes better at what they're doing. So again, when that next project comes up, they're able to execute at a higher and better level. So when you don't have belief in that next sale, it really demoralizes the whole team, right? You don't believe that you're going to sell anything ever again. You don't know who to sell to, where to go find them, or any of that. And then this leads into not investing in your future, investing in marketing, investing in your people, and you're basically just stagnant and you're hoping and praying for that next job to land. That's not a good strategy. So you need to put a system and process together in order to win that next project. Or if you know it's coming, it's just going to be 2 weeks till it gets here, then you need to have basically a process for improvement during that downtime. So that's all I'm going to talk about for today on when you have too little work. Basically use it as a time to get better. If you don't, you're going to have more problems when you do, when that work and that project does come in. So let's talk about systems, right? And then we'll talk about solutions for when you have too much work, when you're too busy and everything else. Because there's a lot of things that we're going to talk about in the systems portion that when we get over to the too much work piece of things that ultimately we'll have some solutions for. So when we talk about systems, you got to have a system for people, right? Recruiting, hiring, onboarding, training, promoting, and retaining those people within your organization, right? How do you go find them? How do you recruit them? How do you hire them? What's the hiring process? What are you going to pay them? What are your contracts? You're going to make them sign NDAs and confidentiality agreements. You're going to have, what's your benefits package? What's HR look like? Then, okay, they sign the package. Now, what's onboarding look like? What's that first week look like? Is there training? Do they walk through the file system and where everything is? Do you take them on a tour around the office? Do you go do lunch? What is that onboarding process for you and your team? Got to have that defined, got to have that fleshed out, as basically that first 48 hours is really going to make the impression about you and your firm to that new hire as to how their experience at your company is going to pan out for them. And then training and promoting. So are you helping them do their job? Do they know what to do? Do they know how to do it? Do they know what to expect for every job? Do they know what deadlines look like? Do they know what turnaround times are? Do they know basically how you run your business? Is everything just hodgepodge and willy-nilly? Like sometimes you do this, sometimes you do that. Like you need to have a documented system, stick to it, and have realistic expectations for what your deadlines are. And you might have certain deadlines for certain clients, different deadlines for other clients. Totally acceptable, right? That's what you've agreed to with your clients, but you just need to have that understood by your team. And when that happens, you can set them up for success. But basically, if they don't know what to expect on the job, then they're going to pretty much fail, right? In some way, shape, or form. So setting up expectations, and that's all part of training. The next part of training is like, do they know how to engineer whatever, right? Do they know how to do lighting systems? Do they know how to lay out lights? Do they know how to put in switches? Do they know what lighting controls look like? For your specific brand of engineering, do they know what those things are? If they're a fresh, young engineer out of school, they probably don't know anything. So you got to teach them all that stuff. How do you teach them? What's the process for it? What does it look like? What do you start with? All of that is what you've got to basically outline a training program to ramp them from green, doesn't know anything, to experienced senior engineer, right? You're going to have a nice, clear path for them to go down and learn and do stuff along the way. And then retaining. So when you retain your team members, right, you keep them working for you. And pretty much anymore, it's like 5 years is kind of like the gold standard of retention, right? If somebody stays for you or with you for 5 years, like that's a long time these days. Most people basically jump ship after 2 years. So kind of in that 2-year mark, it's what are you doing wrong to make people want to quit and go somewhere else? And usually it's in the same field, most likely for more money. So if they're going to do the exact same thing somewhere else, like, do you want to retain them? Are they good enough to retain? Are they problematic and you should have fired them a long time ago? Like, you got to have a retention program. So when they hit these milestones of like learning how to circuit stuff or learn how to lay out lights or learn how to put panel schedules in or whatever specific things, again, in your engineering, I'm using the electrical examples, but whatever specific pieces that you have, when you have those kind of milestones, like, yeah, they can lay out lights, they can do lighting controls, great. Here's your raise, right? Like you've documented that this person is good at this task, can do it on their own. Like, here's a raise. Whatever that raise is for you and your firm. Is it 5%, 10%, certain dollar amount, right? You're going to get $5,000 more a year on your salary, 10 grand, whatever it is. Like, figure that out for you and your firm to say, hey, you're competent in these things. Okay, great. Now you're going to get, X amount of money. And here's the next path. Here's the next thing for you to learn and figure out. Once you do that, you're going to get this, right? And so it keeps them on a growth trajectory, a growth path, so that you're training, promoting, and retaining all your people. And it's in a pretty simple box of how to do this. All of this comes down to really like, how do you do the work? How do you set up projects? What's accounting look like? What's project management look like? What does that meeting kickoff look like for that next project, right? All of this kind of comes into one big bucket of like, how do you do the thing that you're doing, right? How do you engineer the project? And a lot of this is frankly project management on a very big scale. So you've got your individual projects and you've got the management of all of them. And then you've got the individual pieces of each of the projects that you do, right? So this would be like, do you start with the one line and the overall system design for the electrical system? Or do you start with like receptacle layout through the building, then lights, then panels, then mechanical equipment, then furniture coordination, right? In the order of which the systems basically get set, right? Floor plan gets set first, so it's easy to go and do all the wall stuff, which is receptacles. Then you come in and do the lights, because that's when the ceiling gets set and they get laid out. Then you come in and put your panels in, circuit everything up. Mechanicals done with their layouts and systems for the most part, so you can circuit all those things up. Then you can do furniture coordination at the very end, because that's when furniture comes in and does their thing. And that's a pretty good process for electrical and how you would go through a building. Now, mechanical, you're going to do your load calcs first, and then duct layout, then diffusers, all your unit placement, right? You have your system and your layout and how you're going to go through the building. So for each and every one of us, we have our own system and process of how we're going to go through the building. We just got to outline it and then stick to it for every project that we do. And then as we go through here, right, there's always going to be things that come up on each and every project that you're going to need, like process improvement. How can we do this better? Oh, we found a way to do this better. Let's probably update our templates, or let's update the process and how we do this. Document, update. It's one living document for how you do everything that constantly lives, and you get constant feedback on it and you constantly refer to it. But if you do none of that, it will never work as a process document for you to improve how you do things. And then lastly is really just a process for strategic thinking. Now, this is more for your C-suite and executive leadership team, but for anyone else, this is something to start thinking about. Like, how are you going to choose the markets that you go into? How are you going to choose the clients that you go after? How are you going to choose the different systems or sales process that you're going to go down, right? There's a bunch of things that you can do within the engineering and building construction industry. And then it's choosing what you're going to go after. You're going to do design build projects. You're going to do traditional design bid build. You're going to do schools, hospitals, offices, industrial, manufacturing, warehouses. You're going to do housing, right? Pick a lane. You can do it all, right? Whatever that is thinking strategically about picking a market, go after it, figure out how to attract, retain, and continue working for that same client, right? It's all in a sales process, but this is basically the strategic decisions that a firm makes in what markets it's going to enter, what opportunities come up, how are we going to go after them, and again, systematically think about all of these things so that you can improve ultimately your firm. And this leads us into what happens when you win all of this work, right? You found a system to hire people, recruit them, train them. You found a process for getting clients, keeping them, getting more work from them, doing all that kind of good stuff. Like, when you have all of these things going well, you're ultimately going to win a ton of projects. So what is the solution for too much work? Well, first, we got to have more people, right? So that goes back to our hiring process. If you have too much work, you really have a people problem, in that you don't have enough people to do the work that you want. So either everybody's going to work a crap ton of hours and get stressed and burn out and quit, then you really have another people problem, because you now didn't have enough people. Now you have even less people to do the work. So problem. Can you hire and train fast enough to do the projects? Most likely, if you have the work, probably not. So you got to be preemptive in this. And then it's a chicken and the egg problem of, do you hire the people before you have the work, or do you have the work before you get the people? Totally up to you and how you do it, but that is its own problem. So the second solution to this, I have too much work and I can't handle it, is stop selling, right? You stop taking on new clients, you stop doing new work. And the risk here is that you let those clients go and work for somebody else that is a competitor that you might not ever see that client back again, right? Or it'll take you 10, 15 years to get them back. That is a different problem, different risk, right? Or you take on that client, they get really pissed at you anyway for not delivering on the work, and then they go to that competitor anyway. So what are you going to do? Those are basically rock and a hard place decisions. The third one is, if you had effectively used that downtime when you didn't have those projects to do process improvement, to do research and development, is you put in some type of automation solution to help you with the work that you have to do, right? Whether that's doing things like using, Calendly or some other automation tool to schedule people onto your calendar, right? Again, sales, business development, or client meetings, whatever. Hey, here's a meeting link, book a meeting with me. And you block out, only the times that you want to meet, right? Maybe they're afternoon meetings, and, from 1 to 3 is the only time that somebody can book a meeting with you. Whatever that is for you, figure that out. But that's a tool where you're not now spending time in email going back and forth about a meeting time. Pretty simple. Same with like checking email. How often do you do it? Do you block out time just for emails? Or are you constantly hitting refresh on your email browser and wasting a ton of time there? That's a double-edged sword in the work that we do. You need to spend time doing work, but you also need to be, checking emails and getting back to people in a timely manner. So how you do that, again, totally up to you, but something to think about. And with like the email and calls and texts and Instagram and, the internet basically it's a ton of distractions. So how do you basically limit yourself from those distractions? I know that's not quite an automation talk, but it is something that goes into like, you have all this work, but you're still clearly distracted from doing the work that you need to do. And then the last one is like using other things like Grammarly or ChatGPT, whatever, to help you write, clean up emails and just the communication that you're doing anyway on a daily basis. So use these tools to help automate things. Obviously, like the big one is when you schedule time for your projects, are you scheduling it where it's done in a I don't have any distractions kind of time frame, right? Like, hey, this thing will take me 2 weeks to do. And so you schedule it in for 2 weeks, but you don't take into account the, 3 problems you had on past jobs that come up that you now spend, 2 hours on the phone each day doing, right? So out of the 80 hours you have, now you only have 74. You didn't take into account long lunches or your dog being sick or taking your kids to t-ball or your boss coming in and, demanding that you do another project that's going to take 3 days to do, right? So your 80 hours is now down to like 35 in the time you have to do this thing. And you may or may not get it done. Or you got to make up those other 40 hours on weekends, nights, time that you did not plan on working. So this is how somebody goes from 9 to 5 to 9 to 5 to also 8 to midnight, right? You go home, you deal with the kids, the family, all that stuff, then come back in the office to finish out the project. You're also working weekends after soccer games. That is ultimately what happens, right? We've seen it time and time again. You've seen it through the office. You've seen it for years and years on end. This is basically what happens for anybody in construction in our world. So when you have these type of activities, like now think if you put in automation solutions, right? Now think if you automated all the placement of all your electrical devices throughout the entire building, all your receptacles, all your lights, all your switches, all your panels, and then it got circuited. You did that automatically. You could just place all of your views on sheets, or maybe that's already set up in your templates. But now you have basically a full set of, call it 75% construction documents, 75% set. And then you just go in and coordinate in the 30 minutes you have between meetings, the 2 hours that you have between meetings, the 10 minutes that you have between calls, whatever that amounts to. Now the bulk of the work is done. So what was going to take you 40 hours to do anyway, now you have the 35 hours that you have left between all the firefighting, all the other problems to do over that 2-week span. So everything that was going to take that big bulk of time to then now you're just down to coordination. And really, if you need to, you could send out that progress set to the owner and have them review it to be like, hey, what do you think? Buy yourself another few days in time of review and feedback and whatever else so that you can then do the final details, the final coordination, the final pieces to come together. But you have, again, the bulk of the set that's there. It looks really good for owner review, and buys yourself, another week of review time that the owner has. So when you take a look into projects, using automation like what we do at Cowabunga Studios is going to be something that's going to help you to move your projects forward. It's going to allow you to train your staff. It's going to say yes to more clients. It's going to allow you to pull your cash flow forward. I know that's a big term if you haven't been in the financial world or you're not a CFO, but for all the CFOs and accountants out there, like all of your cash flow now comes forward to where, again, because you automated it, you can bill for it sooner. Like you can pull those 2 weeks forward and not have to wait, until everybody is able to work on the project. That automation kicks it off. You can send it for review almost immediately. And then again, pulling cash flow forward a couple weeks. And again, you're going to be able to deliver sooner, coordinate more, and automation ends up being the only reliable tool, right? Like all the things that we talked about in recruiting, hiring, onboarding, training, promoting, retaining, and all the bonuses, all the additional benefits you have to give, dealing with vacation time, dealing with people's families, everything else around that, right? It is a big lift. Now, if you want to build a big organization, you're going to have people. There's no doubt about it. But when you use automation to augment what your people can do and effectively give them more time to train, give them more time to learn, so that all of your people, instead of doing these tedious, mundane, boring tasks that ultimately make them want to leave your firm and go work somewhere else, they can now stay. You can retain them longer. They're going to be worth more to you, to themselves, right? You can pay them more because you have less people in the firm. They're higher skilled, they're better motivated, and ultimately at the end of the day, they produce more for you, for the firm, and for your clients, right? You can serve more clients, you can do more, all because your people are better trained, better equipped, and better able to deliver a great engineering product, a great set of drawings at the end of the day for your clients, for their projects, and for your community. So DM me automation and I'll share with you my playbook on how we put automation into play within our firms and everybody that we work with. So again, DM me automation and I'll share with you my playbook on automation solutions and how you can implement it in your firm. Guys, I know this was a lot to kind of unpack. Talked a lot about systems, talked a lot about problems, and we talked about solutions. But these are the big three. You either have too little work and you don't know what to do. You don't have any systems to go and get new work or train or onboard people. Because again, people are the business. We revolve around our people, our relationships in this industry. And if you don't have those relationships with clients, if you lose a key person and that relationship is now gone, you're not going to win the next project. So having systems and ways to go get new clients, do the work, keep everybody improving and training so that when you don't have enough work or you got some downtime, that everybody gets better. And then ultimately, when everybody's slammed full, you have a system and a process and you're using automation to do it so you can deliver for your clients better, faster, and they stay longer. That is this episode of the Construction Corner podcast. And until